Fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it.
So, I've been holding on to this experience for about a year now, and have decided to share it with you guys, mostly to get it off my chest. I work in a deep underground potash mine. For anyone who has never experienced what it is like to be several thousand feet underground, it is a very uncanny experience. There is no natural lighting, and usually the only artificial light comes from your cap lamp or any vehicles you're operating. You can hear the earth shift and the vast weight above you slowly bear down on the tunnel you're working in. I had been working underground for about 6 months and was being sent to an abandoned part of the mine to make it safe enough for crews to be sent in to recover some equipment and machinery that had been left behind. The area I was being sent in was infamous for being the location a mine operator that I will refer to as Chris had been killed by being pinched in between 2 pieces of equipment and having his torso split in half. This accident had shaken a lot of the guys underground, and many refused to work in the area again. So, as the junior operator, I was the unlucky bastard that had to go in. I was sent in by myself to get the job started, and was supposed to get another operator to come help me once I was ready. The beginning tunnel had so much potash dust piled up over the years that it reached my knees, and made it almost impossible to see while driving in my bolter, a vehicle that drives 8-foot metal bolts into the ceiling to prevent the ceiling from caving in. I remember feeling so uneasy while I was in there, like I wasn't supposed to be there. Once I got to my first location to start bolting, I began setting everything up. I was setting up bolts when I noticed a moving light come from the opposite end of the tunnel from where I had entered. I initially thought it could be another worker that was also doing work in that tunnel, so I started doing cap lamp signals, our own form of sign language with our lights so we can communicate. I signaled for whoever was making the light to come towards me. Once I made that signal, the light stopped moving and, after a few seconds, disappeared. I was becoming worried and tried to reason to myself what the light could be. It really couldn't have been another worker because it wasn't safe to go any further until my work was done. It couldn't have been a piece of equipment because it responded to my light. I was terrified and honestly didn't know what to do. I was scared to attempt to leave because my bolter kicked up so much dust, but I also didn't want to go by foot because I'd only have my camp lamp for lighting. I decided to stay camped inside the bolter till my backup arrived. The light never returned, and when my co-worker arrived, I gained enough confidence to finish the job and leave. I don't know what I saw, but I can't help but think it's the soul of Chris. The idea of his soul being trapped in that tunnel really bothers me, and I actually left the underground for a surface position, partially because of this encounter.
This happened to me a number of years ago when I was in high school. I haven't told anyone about this, so maybe writing it will give me the confidence to share. Many years ago I lived in a small mountain town, and there were many beautiful places there. There was a shrine at the top of the mountain. It was an Inari one. Halfway up the mountain was an old air raid shelter, a well, and a graveyard. All the kids in town called that whole area scary. Kids at school always dared one another to go up there, especially at night, to test their courage. Eventually, my friends and I decided that we were going to go up there to see what all the fuss was about. One of my friends didn't believe in ghosts and wasn't one to get spooked easily. We arrived at the area with the well. It was surrounded by weeds, but we could see an old wooden cover resting on top of the well. There was a huge stone on top of the cover, and it was held in place with some sort of wire. We all speculated as to why this was. Why did a well need to be so heavily covered? We should have been more concerned than we were. We went up to the top of the mountain to check out the old shrine, but it didn't really faze us too much. Since we weren't as freaked out as we hoped to be, we decided that we'd all sneak out at midnight and meet back up and see what the mountain was like in the dark. When the time came, we ascended the mountain with flashlights in hand. We first went to check out the old air raid shelter, and then the graveyard. We were getting mildly spooked out. Nothing major though, just over-talkative. The moon was big and bright that night, so we could see quite well. Next, we approached the well, and for some reason I really wanted to see what was in there. I prepared for it too. I brought some pliers and a screwdriver from home to remove the cover. Lucky for us, the wire was rusted, and it came off almost instantly. With everyone working together, we were able to move the heavy stone off of the well cover. We were working together, and the sense of community was fun. Like a kind of heave-ho level of cheering broke out amongst us boys. When the heavy stone finally toppled, we all roared with excitement. That's a great memory for me. What comes next isn't so much. We all gathered around and shone our torches into the well. There was some old faded writing on the underside of the well cover. It looked religious. I didn't really understand it. The stench that came out from the cover being removed was disgusting. We all simultaneously took a step back. Some of my friends were freaked out and wanted to leave. I wanted to keep looking, and some of my other friends did too. I raced back to the mouth of the well. We peered into the well. Despite the brave faces we were putting on, I think we were all apprehensive. Inside the well was pitch black. We shone our torches, but we couldn't see to the bottom. We felt the cold air rise out from the pit of the well. There must have been water down there. Some friends began to shout into the well to see how much their voices echoed. One of them even spat down there. We all strained our ears to try and find out how deep it was. We expected the echo of water rippling to reverberate through the well, but what came back was something unexpected. The sound that came back was a scratching sound. No one said a word, but we could tell from one another's flashlight-lit faces that we were all puzzled and creeped out. We all stayed silent to try to hear what sound would come next. The scratching continued and then doubled in sound. Someone asked what the sound was. No one had a reply. I took the cover off of the well. I illuminated it with my flashlight and saw countless scratch marks on the underside of the cover. A horrible thought came to me. The cover, the wire, and the stone wasn't to keep everyone out, but perhaps to keep something in. I felt for sure that that something was climbing up the walls of the well. That's what that noise was. I just ran for it without explaining myself. Everyone looked surprised and gave chase behind me. We found one another again at the bottom of the mountain, and we headed to an all-night restaurant to talk about what had happened. Everyone looked pale. One of my friends didn't believe that some of us saw the scratch marks on the underside of the well cover. He said that he wanted to go back and check. No one wanted to go with him. This is where the story gets away from me a little bit, because when my friend who didn't believe in seeing the scratch marks went home, he said he saw long, fresh scratch marks in his family home store. He also said he saw someone wearing a mask nearby. I don't know if he's trying to scare me, but there were scratch marks on his door. I saw them for myself. We went back to the shrine at the top of the mountain the next day and prayed for our safety. Nothing happened after that. I don't know if it's all one big coincidence, but it scared the hell out of me. Thankfully, we're all doing alright still.
Last year, during December school holiday, my friend and I were going to East Coast Park for some fun. Of course, to see if there is any pretty girls there. It was in the evening. We were going through the tunnel at East Coast Park, at Bayshore Park. When we passed by the tunnel, there was nothing there. After all that fun at East Coast, we decided to head home. It was about 3 a.m. While we were cycling, I began to feel tired, so my friend and I decided to take a rest in the tunnel. As we entered the tunnel, there was nothing wrong there. Not even a person was in there. As we were leaving though, I saw a girl, completely dressed in white, standing near the end of the tunnel. She was very pretty. I was amazed by her beauty. So I decided to approach her. She was sitting on the floor looking dazed and blankly staring at the wall. In my mind, I was wondering if something had happened to her. So I asked her what happened. She seemed to understand what I was saying, but she replied in Japanese, which I don't understand. We chat for a while through my friend who knows some Japanese words. She says that she was moody, so decided to come out for a walk as it was nearly 5 a.m. in the morning. She asked me to help her get home as I was cycling. I felt too tired to take her home on my bicycle, so my friend and I thought we might as well send her home by taxi. We gave her the money and she started to flag down a taxi, but not even a taxi stopped in front of her. So my friend and I flagged down a taxi for her, but the driver said bicycles cannot be put in his taxi. I told the driver that it wasn't us, it was the girl who wanted to take the taxi home. The taxi driver told us, "You two jokers trying to be funny, is it?" I argued with him, and in the end he sped away. When we turned around, hoping to send the girl home, she was gone. Later that morning, a jogger told us that a Japanese girl died here a few years ago. We were so scared that we cycled all the way home, not even waiting for the traffic lights. Till this day, I will never forget this spooky incident that happened to me.
Have you guys ever heard of a culvert? It's an underground tunnel which carries water under roads, railroads, trails, and through the cities and towns we live in. Essentially, they are large underground passages. It connects to rainwater pipes and storm drains, and during heavy rainfall, it becomes a floodway. When I was a student, it became popular to explore these tunnels. We loved exploring the culverts and the storm drains beneath Tokyo. They're really easy to get into as well. You just start off by a riverside, find the tunnel entrance or exit, and walk on in. Just remember to bring flashlights because it's pitch black in there. We didn't want to get caught by anyone in the tunnels, so we would go at night. There were so many pigeons in there. When we entered, they began flapping their wings and it terrified us. The more you walked in the dark, the more noises you would hear. There were areas where you could hear the sound of the subway nearby. In other areas, holes in the tunnels led to underground bodies of water. Being down there and hearing familiar things, and taking familiar turns in the road made you feel as if you'd been down there before. We had some really fun times down there, but one incident made us never want to set foot in the tunnels again. We decided to explore a bigger network of tunnels. The entrance was about 5 meters high and about 10 meters wide. A little further into the culvert, and we found a round tunnel about 3 meters high. It seemingly went on forever. After about 5 minutes of us walking down this tunnel, we couldn't see the entrance any longer. There was no light in that tunnel at all. Without our flashlights, we would have been in utter darkness. The tunnel was completely straight, but there were some other holes and caverns along the way. There were many rainwater downpipes connecting to the surface, and ladders leading to manholes. There was a well. It went down about 10 meters. It had some fluorescent markings on it too, so I guess that people came down here from time to time. You know, waterworks employees. So we continued exploring down this straight tunnel for about 30 to 40 minutes, and we came to a big opening. It was pretty big, about 5 meters tall, and it was about the size of a classroom. I thought I had found an exit at the top of a ladder, but I couldn't open the hatch at the top. There was some sort of wire mesh blocking it. I could see outside from the top of this ladder though. It looked as if we were at the edge of a small stream, possibly in a park. We decided not to go any further. We turned back to go the way we came. After a few moments of walking, we lost the tiny bit of light the park had provided, and we were plunged back into darkness again. Suddenly, one of my friends in the group stopped and said, "Hey, can you guys hear something?" We all stopped walking so we could listen. There was a kind of low hum or mumbling sound, like a growl or the sound of a car idling its engine. It was such an indescribable sound. "It's just the sound of the subway again," one of my friends dismissed. "Nah, the subway's got a more continuous sound to it," another argued. We spoke about what it might be, a car or something. It was irregular, yet continuous. Then we all decided that whatever it was getting closer. We listened in silence, and then we heard the sound of water sloshing. It sounded as if something was in that tunnel with us, and it was heading our way. I could see the water moving. I thought that it could be an employee from the waterworks who came through a manhole or something. We all decided to turn our flashlights off and continued listening to the sound. The splashing of water was getting closer and closer. "This is weird, guys," someone muttered. "It's just a water leak or something," someone else said in a non-confident voice. We would have expected to see their flashlight by now, but it was still pitch black. It was coming closer and closer. "It's not a waterworks employee. Why would they be down here this late with no torch?" I said. "They could be wearing night vision goggles. What if it's a spy? Maybe it's someone playing an airsoft game, you know, paintball or something. Then the noise would be louder, dumbass." All ideas were being discussed, some more plausible than others. The sound got louder and louder. It was getting closer. It sounded too big to be human. It sounded too big to be two humans. It was something different. That continuous growling noise was coming with it. No one had to say anything. We must have been thinking the same thing. We turned our flashlights on and started running to the exit. We heard that sound coming up right behind us. I wanted to get a look at whatever was coming towards us, so I shone my torch in its direction as I ran. But I couldn't see a thing. The growling and the sloshing thunderous footstep sound seemed to be speeding up. We broke into a sprint. Just when I thought I was about to collapse through exhaustion, I saw the faint light at the end of the tunnel. I dropped to the floor when we got outside, panting with my hands on my knees, and I stared towards the heavens. None of us looked back towards the tunnel. After we got our strength back, we fled from the area. We didn't want to be around there any longer. We all stood outside a convenience store drinking cold coffees. We talked about what that thing might have been. Ghost? A cryptid? A spy? That sound was beyond terrifying. That growling and that footfall. I've never heard anything like it since. We were all in agreement that running for it was the correct choice. Something is living down there in the dark. That was the last time we went down in those tunnels. The thought of being down there again petrifies me. This incident has really left a mark on me. I can't be underground without getting stressed out. Subways, malls, basements, even underground parking lots, they all creep me out. Don't go down those tunnels under the sea.
In 2018, I went on a semester abroad in Korea, and one of our weekend trips was a visit to the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, between North and South Korea. I wanted to go because I thought it was important for me to understand the place I was in better than just a short academic visitation. We drove up in a tour bus and spent almost the whole day going there, being there and coming back. Visiting the actual border of the DMZ wasn't that unnerving. The folks stationed there were very nice, and even though they warned us to mind our P's and Q's, I was still at a relative ease. I knew I had to be very respectful of this space, and tried not to goof around or take pictures of too many things. It was really educational and enlightening. Here's where the weird stuff begins. We got back on the bus, drove up the road, and were invited to walk down the actual excavated third tunnel under the DMZ. There were virtually no animals anywhere around. No birds, no bugs, no wildlife at all. The area is like a grassland with some trees, so I expected there to be some birds or squirrels, or even mosquitoes since it was going into spring. But there was literally nothing except the people who worked there and our tour group. That started to make me uncomfortable because even at the actual border, there were some pigeons and crows. It immediately had my hackles up. There was supposed to be a shuttle that goes all the way down to the armistice clock, but it was being repaired, so we had to walk. The further we walked down the tunnel, I felt like I was walking through rising water. It started at my ankles, then up to my knees, my waist, and by the time we got close to the armistice clock, I felt like it was all the way up to my neck. I started walking on the balls of my feet with my chin up on reflex because I had the physical sensation that I was trying to wade through neck-deep water. I didn't notice until my friend asked me why I was walking funny. Then I walked normal. I felt like the water was over my head and I couldn't breathe. When I got to the armistice clock, I felt dizzy. My vision was getting spotty and I wanted to turn back. I couldn't move my feet from where I was standing. I felt like something was pushing at my chest, and all of a sudden, it felt like I wasn't myself. I felt like I was someone else. I looked down and felt like I was wearing the wrong clothes. I remember thinking, I'm out of uniform, and kept trying to push the thoughts away and leave, but I couldn't move. I felt frozen. I was staring at the wall behind the clock, a wall that was supposed to be a barrier to keep people from using the tunnel to move between the north and the south. Even though I couldn't actually see anything but the wall, my brain felt like I was looking at a woman and her son. I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's like you're not looking at something, but your brain is receiving some information telling you that you are. I felt like I knew them. The longer I stood there, the more people I thought were there. I remember thinking, there are 12 of them. I kept stepping closer and closer until one of my friends asked me what I was doing. I didn't even realize I was moving from where I was originally standing, which was about 3 or 4 feet back from the clock. I couldn't snap out of it until my other friend tapped my shoulder and said we had to go back up and get back to the bus. When I turned around and looked at my friend, I didn't recognize her. When I turned around to leave, I remember hearing the woman saying, "Wait, where are you going?" When I kept walking, I heard her say, "Please, don't leave us down here." I wanted to cry. I didn't start feeling like myself until I got back on the bus to drop off my backpack and stop in the gift shop before we went back to campus. Apparently, I looked terrified. The cashier asked me if I was okay, and when I said I was, she kind of gave me a funny look. I eventually got over it until my friend went to Korea on a semester abroad last fall. They went to the DMZ again, and I asked him if anything weird happened. He told me that he felt the feeling of rising water too, and even the weird out-of-body feeling at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel doesn't end until you're past the border, but the end we stopped at was the clock and the wall. If you go further, like right to the wall, you get in huge trouble, and I wasn't going to risk that after already feeling strangely. He told me that there was this film they watched after the tunnel that documented its history, like when the tunnel was completely flooded to keep people from using it to move between countries. I missed the film because it took me forever to get up the ramp for some reason. I mean, I knew I was out of shape, but it felt like I got hit by a freight train for some reason. So I walked around the museum, looking at some photos of the Peace Talk complex's construction and the different complexes that are around the DMZ, like housing for the people stationed there, and for workers at the Kaesong Industrial Complex, which has been decommissioned for a long time. It really unsettles me when I think about it. If I think about it too long, I don't sleep right for a couple of days. I haven't found a good place to talk about it at length until I found this sub. Thanks for being here and for listening about my experience. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.